Welcome back to Business 210, Principles of Management with Professor Joe Lane. All right, we are looking at Chapter 7. If you've just finished looking at Chapter 6, I did erase the board. Got all of that kind of mess that we had on there as we were trying to combine planning and strategic management. I think we did a pretty good job with that. And how important all of that was. Now we're looking at a chapter. It's not a very long chapter, but it's a chapter that I think is pretty interesting. It has to do with decision making. Okay, if you've had me in Business 101, you probably got my decision making steps from me. I think decision making is really, really, really important. Okay, managers plan. In planning, do they make decisions? Yes. Organize decisions. Lead decisions. Control decisions. So decision making is a part of all the functions that managers perform. Poor decisions lead to poor performance and lack of success. Now let's talk about you for a minute. You make a lot of decisions every day. I would feel like that probably most of you that are watching this video, you probably brushed your teeth today. I hope you did. I did too. That wasn't a hard decision. It was almost automatic. Some decisions are a little more difficult. Hey, you're watching Chapter 7. Now you may have, but you probably didn't get up this morning and say, man, I get to watch Chapter 7 today. Okay? But you made the decision that I'm in Business 210. I want to do a good job in this course. I want to do well. I want to be effective. So I need to watch the videos. And today is the day for me to watch Chapter 7. And thank you. I appreciate you being with me in Chapter 7. Some decisions are really, really big decisions. Do I need to go to college? What college do I need to go to? What do I need to major in? And most of you that are in Business 210 are majoring in business and technology. A great major. Glad to have you in this major. So decisions are important to you personally, to me personally, and we're going to be looking at decision making as it relates to managers and that type of thing. All right. A decision is simply choosing among alternatives. Most of the times we have alternatives on the way we can do something. If you know, I hear sometimes people say, but I don't have any choice. Well, if you don't have any choice, you don't have any decision, right? You just have to do what you got to do. But most of the times we have choices about most things. We just sometimes are too lazy to try to figure out what the choices are, or maybe we don't know how to go about the process of examining the different choices. And that's kind of what we want to be doing here in Chapter 7. So if you look at the very first of my handout, a decision is a choice made from available alternatives, and decision making is the process of doing this. Process of identifying and choosing alternative courses of action. So I'd like for you to be familiar with what decision making is. Decision making is a process that leads you to making a decision. So I'd like for you to be familiar with what decision and decision making is. Okay, here's how our author says that managers need to make decisions. Really how you and I need to make decisions. And it starts like this, and it's very similar to what I have probably given you in Business 101. This is for rational decisions. You want to make rational decisions. Identify the problem, the opportunity that you have. What's the opportunity we have as a company? What's the problem I have in my department? You got to make sure you identify the problem or opportunity. You can't solve it if you hadn't identified it. Number 2, think up alternative solutions. What are all the different alternatives? Lay them out there on the table. Everything that possibly you can do. Number 3, evaluate the alternatives. Here's all the different alternatives. Now let's select the one that's best. Then implement the one you've selected and evaluate it. How's it doing? If it's doing good, you've made a good decision. If for some reason what you did is not good, then you've got to come back here to one of these others. Did you properly identify the problem and the opportunity? Did you think of all the alternatives? Did you choose the correct alternative? This is rational decision making. This makes sense. If you do this process, then it should lead you to making good, excellent decisions most of the time. We're not 100% perfect, but it'll make us make good decisions most of the time. Now, if you're looking at my handout, our author makes a statement, and I wrote it down here. What's wrong with this model? And my answer is, there's nothing wrong with it. This is the way it should be. But our author, he wants to kind of confuse things for us a little bit, and then he's going to get back and kind of straighten it out. He says, this process, this rational decision-making process, he says it's descriptive. It describes how rational decisions are made. It doesn't describe how they are actually made by managers. Now, wait a minute. I kind of disagree with that. I think that managers make good, or certainly are able to make good rational decisions. So our author, he says, what's wrong with this model? He says this model is prescriptive. It prescribes how it's done, but it's not actually how managers do it. Okay, so he and I are at odds. But let's go a little bit further in the chapter and let's see if we can get back together. He said, okay, here are some non-rational ways that managers make decisions. Here's some non-rational ways that you make decisions. By the way, I want you to utilize the notes, especially if you have your text and you're looking on your text where it talks about non-rational decision making. He only has 2 non-rational types of decision making. We have 3 in the notes, and I want to use all 3. So here's what he says. And there's a couple of words here. Don't let them throw you. The words are kind of big words, but the concept is really easy. He says one non-rational way of making decisions is what he calls satisficing. Managers use the satisficing type of non-rational decision making. What does that mean? They find something that's satisfactory and they say, okay, that's it. It may be satisfactory, but does that make it the best? No. I just want to satisfy the situation. I don't want to make it the best. I don't want to optimize my opportunity. That's more of a non-rational. Seeking alternatives until they find one that is satisfactory, not optimal. That's the satisficing or satisfactory, finding something satisfactory. We don't want satisfactory. We want the best option. The second one he talks about is the incremental. Okay, you have a situation. So you do a little something and you still have it. So you do a little something else and you still have it. You do a little something else, that seems like that solves it, and you say, okay, I'm done. So you just do a little bit. You make little incremental decisions. Yep. And as soon as you make one enough that seems to satisfy it, you're done. That's incremental. That's non-rational. The least that will solve the problem. Take small, short-term steps to alleviate a problem. Just like with the satisficing model, are you going to get the optimum? No. I'm just going to do something until it seems like it gets it off my back, I'm done. The third one is intuition. It just feels right. It just feels good. I just believe this is going to be the right decision. Okay. Does intuition work sometimes? Yeah, it does. You just know. I just feel it. This is what I need to do. You can make a great decision. But let me ask you this. If all the decisions you make or all the decisions a business make are based upon this is just the way I feel, think that's going to work? I don't think so either. So the idea here is our author is saying too many managers use a satisficing or an incremental or an intuitive type process in doing their decision making, which he says is non-rational. And they don't use the rational model. Okay, all right, I understand what he says. Then he throws in something here just kind of out of the blue. He talks about making ethical decisions. Now, obviously that's important, but he throws in something called the decision tree. I don't know if you've ever seen a decision tree or not, but it's kind of like one of these things where you come up and it says, do you want blue? And then he comes out here, yes, no. If it's yes, then you go here. Light blue, dark blue. No. Do you want green or purple? You see what I'm saying? This is called a decision. This is called a decision tree. It's a graft of decisions and their consequences. Okay, if you do this, you go here. If you do this, you go here, and that sort of thing. I'd be familiar with the three types of non-rational decision making. The satisfying model, the incremental model, and the intuition model. And I'll also be familiar with what a decision tree is. It's a graft, G-R-A-P-H, a graft of decisions and their possible consequences. Okay? Just jot that down somewhere. Because you'll see decision trees sometimes around, and that's what they are. Where it just leads you through, and you kind of spreads out whichever way you want to go. All right. Now our author gets into something here. We talked about it a little bit in one of the earlier chapters, evidence-based management. Oh, I know, we talked about it, I think, in chapter 2 when we were looking at science. Maybe that's where it was. You remember what evidence-based management was? Well, that's management based on evidence. Okay, yeah, but what does that mean? Well, remember what we were talking about is evidence-based management has to do that the things you do and how you do them, remember on that science proven, that body of knowledge, things that have proven to work, proven that are correct, that they have stood the test of time and the test of use, and they have found to be correct and truthful and add to the body of knowledge. Okay, let's see what he says. Evidence-based management, the translation of principles based on best evidence into organizational practice. Oh yeah, he said that better than I did. Take the stuff you know that works and put it into the organization. Use it. Then he says, bringing rationality to the decision-making process. He said, set aside beliefs and act on facts. Proven, tried and true facts that are a part of the body of science that we know that works. And he says the way you do that is that you gather information. You're committed to gathering information, finding out those things that you know that have proven in the past to work, the body of science. All right. If you had my decision-making steps, step 1 was identify the problem, the opportunity. Step 2 is gather information. So what our author is really saying is this rational decision-making will work and can work if you put into it evidence-based management or evidence-based decision-making. You make decisions based upon evidence that you have gathered Some of that evidence is evidence that you know are principles that have been proven to be true and correct. He says, if you do that, then this works. And so he and I have kind of got back together now, because I agree, you know, that's what I was saying when we put step number 2, gather information. Okay. So a part of doing rational decision making is gathering information. A lot of information about the particular opportunity or a problem, but also gathering information about what works and what's been proven to be true. Okay. So let's do it one more time. And I want you to be familiar again with what evidence-based decision making is. The translation of principles based on best evidence into organizational practice, bringing rationality to the decision-making process. If you use evidence-based management, if you seek information based on principles that have worked, things that have proven to be good and acceptable, have been added to the body of science. If you put that into your organizational practice, it'll bring rationality to your decision-making process, and you can make rational decisions. Okay, I want you to know, I think I said, the rational decision-making process. You don't have to put this in. We thought that's really the evidence-based management part. But I drew it for you on your handout. What do you think I drew those circles with? You think I free-handed those? No. Silver dollar. These are really important steps because they're silver dollar steps. That's what I use to draw. I have a special silver dollar I keep at the house to draw my circles. Sad. Okay. Backside of the page for me. We've kind of got the heart of this. We've kind of got the heart of this decision making. What is decision making? Choosing among alternatives. And the process of decision making, or decision, back up. A decision is choosing among alternatives. The process of doing this is called decision making. Then we want to know the rational decision making process. And then we look, you say, well, what's wrong with this model? Well, the model is prescriptive. It tells how you should do it, not actually how it's done. And he talks about, here's some non-rational ways. Satisfying, incremental, intuition, that sort of thing. But then he says, if you use evidence-based management with this, it works. It does bring rationality back. A couple of other things about, and that's the heart of this chapter. A few things, though, that he wants to talk about a little bit, and in my handout, it's kind of on the back side of the sheet. He talks about business analytics. All business analytics, it's kind of a special type of decision making. And what he says is, a lot of times when you're making decisions, analysis of your business data can help you make those decisions. And now in 2020, we have tremendous technology and things that we can dig deep into the data, deeper than ever before, and that helps us make good decisions. I'd just be familiar with what business analytics are, and that's just very sophisticated, very detailed business data analysis. All right. He talks a little bit about decision-making styles. We have different decision-making styles. Now, look, this is and if you use evidence-based management, we've said this is a way to make rational decisions. So this is the rational decision-making process. And I'm right here, okay, and I'm looking at it. Well, do I bring a particular style of my own to this? My experiences, my background, my prejudices, my whatever, as I do this? Yeah. And if I put you here, or anybody that's watching this, different ones of us have different decision-making styles. So we just have to be mindful of the fact that our decision-making style can sort of affect how we make decisions. He says decision-making styles, how an individual perceives and responds to information. Are you more, in a business situation, are you more task-oriented? Or are you more people-oriented? Being more task or more people-oriented, might that influence how you make a decision? If you're making this decision with the task uppermost in your mind, the task you're trying to accomplish, might you make that decision slightly different than if you're looking at the people involved in that's going to be accomplishing this? So he says whether you're task-oriented or people-oriented can influence your decision-making. And he says also your tolerance for uncertainty. Isn't that interesting? If you are someone who likes structure and things being stable, as opposed to someone who deals really, really well with a lot of flexibility with things that are, I guess the word would be uncertain. So I hope I'm making sense there. So all he's saying is, let me try this, sum this up, because I don't want to go crazy, because it's not a big deal. It's just to understand whether you are task-oriented or people-oriented, or whether you have a high tolerance for uncertainty or a lower tolerance for uncertainty, is going to have some effect on how you make decisions. The best example I know is me, because I know me. I'm more people-oriented than I am task-oriented. Now, I know the task has to be done, but I know the task has to be done with people. So as I'm making a decision, task got to be done, people's going to be doing it. People is going to be a little more to the forefront of my mind as I make that decision. Is that good or bad? Well, I hope for me it's good, but I'm just recognize that. Now, tolerance for uncertainty. I don't like uncertainty. I was a CFO for years and years and years, a chief financial officer for several different organizations. Uncertainty when you're in the financial world is not fun. So I don't like uncertainty. If I have to deal with it, that's okay, but I prefer not to. So I know that when I'm making a decision that will allow more certainty in what's going on is going to be more favorable to me than otherwise. You may be making a decision and say, hey, look, if we go out there and it gets crazy for a while, that's okay. I can handle it, we'll make it through, we'll do great. See, that wouldn't be me. So, to sum up, your decision-making style, how you perceive and respond to information is going to affect how you make decisions. And he talks about your tolerance for uncertainty and whether you're more task or people-oriented. Last couple of things in this chapter. He talks a little bit about group decision-making. And he talked about some of the advantages and disadvantages of group decision-making. Now, I didn't put them on your handout, so I'll chat about them here just a little bit. You probably could do this yourself. What are some advantages of group decision-making? 2 heads are better than 1. People get involved. And sometimes when they get involved, they're more committed. Right? So there are some advantages to group decision-making. Let's see what he says. Greater pool of knowledge. We just said that. Different perspectives. Not only greater knowledge, but different perspectives. Intellectual stimulation. Getting together sometimes can stimulate folks. Better understanding of decision rationale. If you participate in making a decision, you're more apt to understand the reasoning behind the decision. And so that way you'll be more committed to that decision. Deeper commitment to the decision. So there's some of the advantages, and I'd be familiar with some of these advantages and disadvantages of group decision making. Now, what are some disadvantages of group decision making? All right, let's look at what he says. A few people dominate or intimidate. Now, group decision making works best when you have group participation. You don't have someone dominating. Okay. Number 2, groupthink. What? Groupthink, Groupthink, occurs when group members strive to agree for the sake of unanimity and thus avoid accurately assessing the decision situation. What does that mean? If the group is more interested in coming up with a decision that satisfies everybody, can you live with this? That's not necessarily, and most times it's not going to be the best decision. See what I'm saying? We're trying to get together for a decision, but look, we want to make a decision that makes everybody happy. See, sometimes a decision that makes everybody happy is a compromise decision. It's not the best. That's what occurs when group members strive to agree for the sake of unanimity, the sake of agreement, and thus avoid accurately assessing the decision situation. A third one is satisficing. We've heard that word because most people would just as soon cut short a meeting the tendency to seek a decision that is good enough, just satisfactory. And he says, and the fourth disadvantage is what he calls goal displacement. Occurs when the primary goal is subsumed by you start off with one thing and you get off as a group onto something else. It's not what you originally were tasked to do, if I can use that word, or tasked to do. Goal displacement. So I just be familiar with, and you're not going to list them or anything, but I may do a multiple choice or something like that. What are some advantages or disadvantages of group decisions? Advantages: greater pool of knowledge, different perspectives, intellectual stimulation, better understanding of the decision rationale, and deeper commitment. Disadvantages: a few people may try to dominate or intimidate. Group think. Satisficing, where you just try to find something that's satisfactory. Groupthink is where you just try to find something that pleases everybody. And then goal displacement, when you substitute the primary goal that you're going for something else. Okay, just some advantages and disadvantages of group decision making. One other thing he talks about here in this chapter, he talks about what you as a manager need to know about group decision making. What are some things that as a manager, I personally like to get people involved in decisions. Maybe not every decision, but most times I think there's some real, some advantages to group decision making. Again, different perspective, a pool of knowledge. I think people are more committed if they're a part of decisions and that sort of thing. But he says, here's some things you need to know. Number one, group decisions are less efficient. It just takes more time. You can make a decision pretty quick. You can even go through a rational process pretty quick. When you get more people involved, it's less efficient. Does that mean you should never do it? No, it just means you just need to recognize it's not the most efficient method, but it may be the best method. Size affects decision quality. If you get too large a group involved, it's going to hurt the quality of the decision. The tendency then is to do that satisficing, just do what's satisfactory, or try to do what pleases everybody, or you get off the subject, or you get off what you're trying to do. A smaller group is fine, but as you get larger, it affects the quality of the decision. Number three, maybe too confident. Sometimes a group can get together and they become so confident in their decision, if their decision is wrong, it can be a real problem. And then number four, knowledge counts. I like this. When managers or groups get together to talk about decision making, get together people that know what they're talking about. Get together with people that's going to be involved. If you want to get different perspectives and you want to get increase the body of knowledge, you got to get people that know what's going on. You understand what I'm saying? People that's going to be involved with it, people that are knowledgeable of it. Okay, so just some little thoughts about some things you need to know about group decision making. I think the last thing I even want to mention in this chapter is something called brainstorming. You ever heard that? What is brainstorming? It's a technique that you can use, especially in group decision making. If I'm just going to brainstorm stuff, what is that? What is that? Brainstorming is where you try to generate multiple ideas. You just kind of, I got too quiet, got too still, cut off part of my lighting system here. So it's back on. So brainstorming, he says, generate multiple ideas and alternatives for problem solving. Let's just brainstorm it. Let's just think about it. Just throw out things that you think might work, or just give me your thoughts, whatever you think. Now again, it's better to do this with people that are knowledgeable about what you're discussing. But brainstorming is just throw it out there. Let's just talk about it and look at it from every angle that we possibly can. Decision making, important stuff. Important stuff for you to make good decisions in life, in school, that sort of thing. By the way, these rational decision making, this is what you should be using in making decisions as it relates to your home and family and business and school and everything else. When you're making decisions, what's your opportunity? What's the problem? Gather information. Gather good information. What are your alternatives? Select what you think is the best alternative. Implement it, evaluate it, and see how well you did. If you'll use this process, you'll make good decisions most of the time, and make some really great decisions as well. So that's kind of the idea behind decision. Really, really important stuff, decision making. And because in planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, managers are always making decisions. He also said, our decision-making style kind of affects how we do decisions. And he says there are some advantages and disadvantages to group decisions. And he finished up by telling us, here are some things you need to know about group decision-making. And one of the techniques that you can use to stimulate alternatives is something called brainstorming. Okay, I think that's chapter 7. As you know, my executive producer, Ryan Pierce, I probably have mentioned this before. If you ever see Professor Pierce, tell him what a great job he did in putting together, slotting these videos into Canvas for you and everything. The music that he put on the front and all that sort of thing. He's been a really good executive producer here. Like I said, these things may go viral. Who knows? Who knows? We may be worldwide before long. All right, enough of that. Enjoyed doing the chapter on decision making with you. I'm going to take a short break, and then I'm going to come back with chapter 8.